Hey guys, so in this video, we're doing guitar field trip day in Nashville, and I just want to let you know that we're gonna check out a couple different spots. Not gonna be a whole lot of playing in these videos, but I think you'll find them interesting, and so looking forward for you to come and take the wild ride with us. Thank you so much. All right, folks, it's guitar errand day here in Nashville, which we like to call the field trip, the wild ride. We never know where we're going to end up or what's going to happen, but we got young Tom. We're going to take these two reissued deluxe reverbs that Fender was kind enough to give us for the club, And of course, they've been beat up by every punk rock band that's ever set foot in the Underdog. We're going to take them in here to Nashville Amp Service, our good buddy Todd Sharp, and he's going to get us all set up. Right, young Tom?
Oh yeah, I just got to play a little,
a little Tetris.
A little Tetris.
Here. We love this place, and we love Todd Sharp. So we're going to go in here and see what's going on, and we'll check back with you here in just a second. And of course, everybody's going to yell at me because the cameras. I'm in seasickness mode on the cameras. All right, here we go. Howdy, friends. So we made it inside back here to the.
You made it.
This is backstage.
You got in
at Nashville.
It took a while to clear security.
The door was actually unlocked.
Yeah.
For a change. It's hard to get in here to see Todd, but one of my favorite people on the planet. Todd, I've known you for a long time, man.
That's right.
Back when you were in the basement in Franklin, and I'll never forget this. I was at your shop when I got the call to tour with Jerry Douglas, and I'll never forget. One of my few things that I do remember was I was at that shop and the phone rang, and these guys were so fun to go see down there, man. You and it was Jeff and all those guys at the time. And it was just, you wanted to spend a day with you down there, you know?
We're still fun.
You're still fun.
If we're not having fun, we're not doing it. You're
not doing your job. So now you're in Berry Hill. But I wanted to ask a question that I get asked a lot, and that is, if you can only have one amplifier, guys are asking me, should I get a Princeton hand-wired, an old one, a new one, deluxe reverb? I always say get a deluxe reverb reissue. And then what we're doing today is we brought a couple deluxe reverbs in that have gone down at the club that Fender gave us, and so we're debating on whether or not you do a thing to them that makes them better amps. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's a big question. I mean, really, the answer is that you should get a Todd Sharp amp. Get one of mine because,
of course,
they're fucking good.
Right.
And they're built by a guitar player.
Right, a badass one at that.
By hand, with some help from a few of the people around here. But if that's not in your menu, for whatever reason, I mean, there's a couple of different amps that are out there. And the reason I say it's a big question is because of the changing world of manufacturing and what's built and how things are built.
Right.
So, I guess number one, Fender is, a great amplifier company and quite a legacy, obviously. Right. And they have been making these amps like the Deluxe Reverb reissue or a Princeton reissue. The Blues Junior is probably a great amp.
That's
really.
Right.
For not a ton of money, a Blues Junior is a pretty cool little amp.
That's right. I forgot about the Blues Junior. Yeah.
And they, all of these kind of work great, but they're not built like they used to build them in 1964, or like we build them by hand with eyelet boards and hand, wired by hand with good quality pots and good jacks and all that. So they're the same, like the reissue Fenders are the same circuit, but they're built by more modern standards, and things tend to degrade after a couple of years, or if they bounce around on a bus for a while or get kicked around in your trunk or whatever.
Right.
So we do a lot of stuff where we take those old amps and kind of strip them and rebuild them by hand.
Right.
Which is not a simple operation or like cheap to do, but if you kind of measure that to, if I wanted to buy a vintage deluxe reverb, or an old blackface Princeton, one, you're probably going to need to get it tuned up anyhow
Totally.
It's old. It's probably got a few jacks and maybe a bad pot or some loose sockets that
Right.
need tweaked, and maybe a couple of filter caps replaced because they're 50, 60 years old.
Right. For it to be a working,
To get it back to
reliable
go,
amp.
yeah, I got a great old amp here.
Yeah.
And an interesting alternative that we do a lot is people buy their reissues and bring them here and we strip them.
Right.
And then rebuild them because you do have a good chassis, a good cabinet. The transformers, that kind of varies from period in manufacture date.
Mm-hmm.
There's replacement transformers even, but that's an interesting alternative. One of the things we do here at our shop, Nashville Amplifier Service, by the way, amprepair.com, is we have like upgrades for Blues Juniors and Pro Juniors.
Right.
They have their sort of deficiencies because of the way they're built.
Right.
And I get it. It's like for them to change that, they'd have to charge more, and then it wouldn't be such an affordable, cool little amp.
Right.
So like we do a Blues Junior upgrade that's, I'm not going to mention the numbers because I'll probably mention the wrong number without looking in my computer, but that's stuff we do regular all the time.
Right. I wasn't trying to interrupt you earlier, but I wanted to make sure that they know. So when you get say you got a deluxe reverb reissue, which these were great until they weren't. And so, but when I get something repaired from you, it's good for, that deluxe and pro that you've gone through. Those are working reliable amps for years and years and years. And so, but what these guys might or might not know is the deluxe reverb reissue is a tube amplifier, but what you told me earlier, it's still built on a circuit board and the power cord might come out. There's just some things about it that, like you said, they're not made like the way they were in the 60s, and so they just don't hold up as well.
Yeah, it's just the circuit, for instance, in the deluxe reverb reissue, it's true to the original circuit. The jacks and pots are on one thin PC board on the front panel that connects to the main board in the middle of the amp with ribbon cables.
Right.
So that's kind of like what you'd see in your computer.
Right. Yeah.
When things break or you want to maybe, a lot of times people will ask us to, can you do some tone modification? Could it sound better?
Right.
And, to sort of tweak a stage, right? To tweak on an amp like that's built on a PC board, it's not made to have parts pulled on and off.
Right.
Repeatedly.
Right.
And plus they're soldered on the other side, so you got to lift the board up. Once you do that a few times, you start breaking the wires that are connected to it because it's not built for that.
Right.
It's built to get stuffed probably by a robot, wave soldered,
right,
and assembled in a factory wherever they assemble them, and good to go.
Right.
And on sale now, the guitar set for only $89.99. I don't know.
Right. But that's a great alternative. So for somebody that is having that debate of like, man, do I get a Marshall? Do I get a Vox? Do I get a Fender? There's all these different ones. You know me, I love having reverb. And so the deluxe reverb reissue, and if you want to have Todd mod it, this is not a sales pitch by any means, but you can take that amp, save some money, and have a reliable amp that is going to sound good and be very versatile. So it's funny, me and Jed and Tom have been doing these gigs, and we all show up with black-faced Fenders, and those guys can play through anything. I'm kind of a one-trick pony with the Fender amps, as you know, but we all show up with, Tom's got his Deluxe, it sounds amazing. Jed's got his Vibrolux, that sounds great, and I've got the old Pro Reverb. And it's funny how you kind of go back to those amps for being the benchmark of just versatile,
Yeah, and every guitar player is his own guy. Not everybody's a Fender guy. You just mentioned 3 guys who like Fender amps.
Right.
And Fender made great amps. There's no getting around that.
Yeah.
They are a benchmark, just like Marshall is a benchmark if you're more of a rock and roll guy.
Right.
Vox.
Yeah.
The Vox AC-15 is a cool little amp.
Right.
I can't think of the model right now, but there's a little tiny Marshall that's solid state. It's a couple years old. It's not one of their newer ones. And they sound great, man. You know, if you want to rock out.
Yeah.
So, you know, you got to sort of look around and maybe plug in and go, well, am I a Vox guy, a Marshall guy, or a Fender guy?
Right. Right.
Or,
and most
or a Todd Sharp guy.
And your amp, because I mean you're not only a great amp tech, but I think of you first as a songwriter, singer, and a fucking amazing guitar player who's had arguably some of the biggest gigs, real rock gigs in Nashville. For a guy in Nashville, for a guy worldwide, for that matter, Rod Stewart. I mean, you've played with some of the greatest ever. And if you ever hear this guy, he's a total badass. So I think of you in that way first. But you know, like your amp is kind of a unique thing. But for most amps, like if you go find all these boutique amps, they're based on Fender, Vox, or Marshall.
That's right.
It's kind of like a guitar. If you want a telly, get a great telly. It's not really going to work if you start, you know, for the most part, changing a bunch of stuff. But if you realize that most iconic tones are arguably based on those three distinct sounds, that will help you kind of find, you know, what you're looking for.
Yeah, very true. And you know, I say it often. It's an interesting industry, this musical instrument for guitar players.
Yeah.
And it's like if you were to go to the NAMM show every year, and I always used to go every year.
Right,
Sometimes my amp company goes.
Right.
You're gonna walk around. You're gonna go, "Wow, man! Here's all the new stuff." It's like a Telly. That's like a Strat, and that's like a Les Paul.
Right. Right.
and then there's pickups, and the pickups are like, to make a long story short, there's an entire world of industry around musical instruments for guitar players that's based on achieving the state-of-the-art 1959.
Right.
How do we make them as good as we had them in 1959?
Right.
Those were the great amps, those are the great guitars. And it doesn't have to be that particular year, but I'm just saying 60 years ago, state-of-the-art technology is largely what's being pursued today.
And they're trying to reinvent
by all
that.
the manufacturers.
Yeah, and they're trying to reinvent that all the time because they have to stay in business.
When you look at that, though, it's actually kind of humorous.
It is.
It's like 65 years later.
Totally.
We're, for a large part, trying to figure out how to do what was done that long ago as good as it was done.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting trick. Of course, there's a lot of new modern stuff, digital technology and modeling stuff, and Line 6 makes all this cool stuff.
Yeah.
Fender's making
we hate that shit.
Well, you know, I don't know that I hate it. It's just, it's not me, but I you know, our shop gets all this stuff and we play it, and a lot of times I go, man, this is cool.
Right.
I get it.
Now I will say this, and then I know we've got to wrap it up, but to explain the modelers a little bit, because a bunch of guys will argue about the Kempers and the whatever they are. I don't know, what are the brands? Kemper,
Line 6,
Line 6, all the modeler stuff. Okay, great. But here's why we don't like it. It's not just that we hate it because we're getting old. It's not that. It's the fact that when you play through those, they're not tracking. So there's no dynamics. So if you're not putting enough output into those, they just stop working. So there's no dynamics. If you want to get really soft with one of those modelers, it doesn't track. And so with tubes, you're able to, you're directly connected to that amp. You're part of it. So when you hit the strings, you can hear everything, and you can get as soft as you want. Roll your volume down, whatever you want to do. And what I've experienced the 1 or 2 times I've played through those modelers, which of course I'm not a fan, you don't get the dynamics, and that's the reason why for me. But
yeah, well, it's a different technology.
Yeah,
they're not for everybody. Just like, you know, I make a certain kind of guitar amp, which is not modeled after a Fender, Vox, or a Marshall.
Right.
I kind of went at my approach in my own way.
Yeah, and it's
they're
amazing.
not for everybody.
Right.
You know, I wasn't trying to do that. Modelers aren't for everybody.
Right.
I guess the way things are going with a lot of touring musicians and the way people are doing it, I understand why somebody would go, well, all I got to do, I can fit this thing in a bag. It's kind of like a purse.
Right.
That's my rig.
Yeah.
When
Well,
I
if you're
played
on-
with Rod Stewart, I had probably, 2 Dumble cabinets, 2 Marshall heads, a spare head,
Right.
a Bradshaw switching system, which is over there in the corner, the size of a mini
I
refrigerator.
bet that sounded good
A
though.
pedal board, a dozen guitars, you know what I mean?
Right.
And then
Yeah.
eventually it ended up under a stage in a box and brought back up through in-ears.
Right.
And at that point, you're like, I might as well just use a modeler.
Yeah. Well, and if we got into in-ear monitors and putting the stamps under the
That's-
stage,
that's a whole other thing,
whole
too.
other conversation. We don't have time to get into it because trust me, you don't want to hear us go off about that shit. But man, Todd, thanks so much. Always a pleasure.
Of course.
You're one of my favorites ever.
Likewise.
Love you, man. Young Tom came in from Hendersonville and met me at Todd's amp shop, which is right down the street. This is so funny that your shop, Todd's shop, and my rental property are all, and the pedal shop, are all within like just a couple blocks of each other. It's so in this funky little light industrial area called, I call it Berry Hill, but it's really Grandview Heights.
Is it really?
Does it have a name?
Yeah, it's
That's
called,
news to me.
It's called Grandview, and this is Greg, who owns Exactone Solutions, and Barry, who by now you probably own Exactone Solutions also.
No, I just Barry just pawned.
No, Barry is Exact Tone Solutions, so there you go.
These guys are amazing. If any pedal board needs that you have, just check out their Instagram account, and then you can see the beautiful work that they do. But they're also just dear friends and just amazing human beings. And then right down the street in Berry Hill proper, you've got Glaciers,
Yep.
tons of studios, Blackbird, and all kinds of other stuff right there. So it's a cool little area. It's just south of downtown. And also at the top of this hill over here is an amazing view of downtown that not many people know about. You know,
Absolutely.
it's kind of a cool little hidey hole area over here.
And in the same area, you've got Tony Higby at the Guitar Center Custom Shop that takes care of a lot of guitar needs and so forth. So Tony's really good.
Yeah, I don't know.
He's a great resource
That's cool.
for those guys.
And have you guys seen? There's a new vintage store over here called Music City Vintage in Berry
Heard about
Hill.
it. Tom was telling us about it.
Yeah, that's
Or
a
Boot
really
was
good.
telling us about it.
That's a cool new spot. We'll probably check that out, and then over to 8th Avenue, Melrose. It's all kind of connected. You've got Carter's and Gruen's and Rumblesea, which is, it's funny that all those guitar shops ended up on 8th Avenue.
Right.
It's kind of cool. I like coming down here because it hasn't changed a whole lot. So it still reminds me of the old days, and you've got Baja Burrito and a bunch of good Mexican restaurants around here.
I still remember the first time that you came in. Barry was on his way in from the Spring Hill area. You came in and Barry and I are talking and we're on the phone. He says who's I said we got a guy in the shop. He wants us to repair a few pedals and so forth. And he goes, well, who is it? I go, I don't know, some guy named Guthrie, And then he walks in. He said, "Why didn't you tell me Guthrie Trout was there?" So that was literally 2011. That was year one. That was very early on.
Wow.
Yeah. And I kept. You would come in and you would play some things and so forth. And it's like I couldn't believe that before your fourth cup of coffee that you were just on it every morning,
man.
that you would play. So
Thanks, man. Yeah, regionally known and marginally talented. No, these guys have been great, and man, I can't even say. And of course, now you guys are doing. I mean, you guys are literally doing everybody's work here. I mean, you're doing everybody, and so I can't believe that the work that you guys do is so precise and meticulous, and your attention to detail is like, it's just incredible. And this is the place to come if you need anything. Just check out their Instagram account, and you'll see the amazing work that these guys do.
That's very kind. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate
and it grew out of, I still remember the days of, you and Jed and Ryan Warner,
Right.
and it started was a lot of crickets the first few years of
Yeah,
you
I
know.
spent a lot of time here all by myself. All
There's a
day.
lot of lean times up front, but it's
Yeah.
due to people like yourself
Well-
and so forth, really being kind to us and getting us out there with folks. It's
And my pedal board, for me to say that, my pedal board is probably the smallest thing that you guys do now. It's like I come up with these 3 pedals or something, but
That's a good example though, because we've done big boards for you.
Yeah.
Like remember that big old studio board we did
Yeah.
on the trailer
back
crash
when I
board?
thought I was going to have a career.
But I think for me, that small board is always an example to me, and I will use it with other guys who normally by the time somebody comes here and wants to get something done, they're very afraid of leaving something off because it's like, I'm getting an XTS board. I need to make sure that it has everything on there that I could ever use.
Yeah.
And then they kind of lie to themselves a little bit and be like, well, I need this and I'm going to use this or whatever. Like the 2 small boards that you have, they're like 12 by 12.
Yeah.
They're strictly what you use. It's like all killer, no filler. Like there's no sort of keeping up with the Joneses. Like it's just the stuff that you have and you like, and it's worked great. We've barely had to touch those boards,
Right.
Because they're just right.
That's right. And you know what? That's amazing that you said that, because I was just talking to Todd. You know, when you get something done here, and every once in a while it's a pedal jack or something, and we'll have to get something cleaned up or something, but very rarely. I mean, I wish I saw you guys more, but you know, stuff just works. And with Todd doing the amps too, when you get something fixed at Todd's shop or here, it's for real, and it works for years until you need to come back. And so that's the whole thing is, man, it's like, it's reliable, it's consistent, and you know, we don't, as musicians, as you guys know, all that we want to be able to do is make music and not have to be limited by the inconsistencies or limitations of our gear.
Yeah.
And that's what you guys allow us to do. And not only are you fixing things, that's just the bottom. It's like what you guys are doing above that is, you know, about, you know, all that you're making pedals, you know, about tone, you're good guitar players, you're doing much more than just soldering cables together. That's like the foundation of what you do. But you know about signal chain and, like, you know, a lot of really deep stuff that a lot of guys like myself, we're not aware of those things, you know.
Yeah, I think it's an important sort of distinction, because it's the same with guitar players too. There's high chop guys, high chop, low taste.
Yeah.
And what you really need, I mean, you would much rather trade somebody who's maybe not a burner but has great taste.
Right.
And when the best are both.
Totally.
High chops, high taste.
Yeah.
And that's who you want to. We're fortunate here that we work with a lot of guys like that. There's just the town is just replete with them. But that's what we want to do. What you just alluded to is we want to take things off your plate.
Yeah.
Like you like this thing, we want to keep it so that you can keep liking this thing.
Right.
And we want to smooth all the rough edges out on the logistics and all of that, and we just give you something that just works. And a brigadier to you is just a delay. You don't care anything about how many watts it consumes, or, you know, is it going to play nice with so and so on such and such or whatever. Let us take care of that, and then you can play guitar.
Totally. Yeah, I need all the help I can get, so we certainly appreciate that. It's always a pleasure.
I think the interesting thing too is being here in the greater Berry Hill or in Grandview Heights as we know it now, is the amount of service that we're able to give the pro players as well as the guys that are just getting started out and guys that just play in their church band on Sunday.
Yeah.
You know, the service after you have this big board built, and it's not exactly cheap to have that done, but especially if you live here in the area, or if you're driving or you come through the area, having us check out the board, because typically, you know, I've heard Barry spiel 1,000 times now. 6 months from now, you're gonna think you have a bad cable, and you're going to come in and it's going to be smuts inside one of the jacks, and it's rarely a bad cable.
Yeah.
I think we determined the other day that we maybe a handful of bad cables that have gone bad in the last 10 or 12 years. And a lot of that's because guys were swapping out pedals a lot themselves.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that we do is for guys that just don't want to touch it or have the the chance of breaking something, they can just pop it in here. We'll do the pedal swap, and as long as it's under 30 minutes, it really doesn't cost anything to get that done.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I came up with this little satellite board just for a couple things, only with the Trio. I really don't take it with anybody else just because it's kind of specific, that Strymon Lex rotary sound, and then that little cloudburst. I only use that like a couple times in our show, our set, and so that kind of threw that together. And so we don't take this stuff, we don't take it easy. I mean, we're throwing that thing in the bag, and I'm stomping on stuff, and it's dirty, and so, I mean, it really does. If you guys, I mean, that pedal board that you guys put together, it just works. I mean, it works. Yeah.
I mean, I'll ask Barry. I think I even did it last week one time. Hey, when was the last time we saw so and so?
Yeah.
It was like 4 years ago when we did a board, and there's a guy working in town every day.
Right.
I think there was we've seen Derek recently a bit, but I mean, there was a period of time where he was so busy that his boards they just kept up with the pace and so forth. So it's
That's what you want.
yeah. I mean, Eric by this time has done probably 1 million solder joints, and it's I don't even do my own work anymore. I go, hey Eric, would you do this or that? He's so quick at it. So
That's awesome. Hey, I got a last question for you guys. I think these guys on the YouTube might find this interesting, but I know for me, and Tom's this way. I think Michael Rhodes was this way. I'm sure there's a bunch of other guys that were this way. But I use those Planet Waves Tour Series cables.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not talking about what these guys use on the actual pedal board hardwired, but when I go from the delay to the amp or the tuner to my guitar, I'm using those Planet Waves Diodario Tour Series cables, and have had really good luck with those cables, and I love them. They're not too stiff. They roll, they wrap up nicely and lay nicely on the ground, but they also sound good. And so I have never liked these really fancy, super expensive guitar cables. And so can you guys allude a little bit of why that might be? I'll tell you what happens to me. When I plug in like a really expensive cable that somebody wants me to try, it usually, the guitar gets really bright, or it gets extended in the low end, and I think cheap guitar cables sound better.
Yeah, I think it boils down to kind of what home is for you. It's kind of like if you grow up in the country in a cabin, you may not be totally comfortable in like a hyper urban, like totally decked out, ultra modern, stone and concrete kind of thing. It just might feel wrong to you.
Right.
When if you looked at it quantitatively, between like your childhood home and that place, everybody would be like, this is worth more.
Yeah.
It's more beautiful. It's almost quantitatively more beautiful, but it's not right.
Yeah.
It's not what you're used to.
Right.
It doesn't meet your taste.
Yeah.
But so when you take that Uber hi-fi cable, it's just that. It's probably lower capacitance, so it's loading down your pickups less, so you're going to have slightly more output overall, just slightly, and then the resonant peak of the guitar is going to shift out and up, so the kind of the peakiness of it is, so the kind of the voice of the pickups will change.
Right.
And your mileage will vary based on your pickups and based on the device that you're plugging into, whether it's a fuzz face or a overdrive or an amp or something like that. But it can definitely, especially at the ends, like something uber high end compared to like a coily cable.
Right.
There's going to be a big difference between those two things. So finding something that you like and just sticking with it. And then if something's not bothering you, like you don't have to chase the dragon.
Right.
You're like, something better is out there. So unless unless you think it sounds like this,
Right.
don't change.
Right. Yeah. Is that you think that's why people say that Eric Johnson can tell the difference? Back in the day, this was a big thing. Like he could tell the difference between different batteries he was using.
Yeah, I think he had super ultra sensitive ears and so forth. You know.
Yeah.
I think to me, whenever I think about when I've heard like secondhand from like stories that Greg has told being with him or stories from other places, to me, hearing Eric talk about it third hand, it feels like a cross for him to bear. It's like not something he likes
Yeah.
being able to do. It's almost like an affliction,
Right.
like that he has to hear
Gotcha.
what he hears. And
Yeah.
obviously that changes with age. Everybody's ears, your
Right.
ears don't get better as you age,
Right,
as
right.
far as like
Yeah.
hearing stuff.
And we all have our own levels of neuroses, you know,
Yeah.
and things that we're just crazy about. You know, Gibbons, who I finally have played some of his guitars, and it's no lie, he's using sevens, you know, sevens. I think sevens. And man, when he plugs in and he plays, it sounds really good. It sounds just like Billy Gibbons.
Yeah.
And so I could never play a guitar with sevens, and probably most people in Nashville couldn't. But when he picks it up and he plugs in, I mean, there's no lack of tone.
Right.
You know,
Does he use super low frets, or is he just extremely light touch?
he's just got a really light touch, man.
Yeah.
He's not working any harder than he needs to. But
amazing.
man, I've been doing a couple gigs with him, and I'm leaving Sunday to go to New York to jump on that little tour for a couple days and then jump off. We just did Hawaii
I was gonna say, you guys were in Hawaii, right?
with the BFGs, which is
Yeah, he called just before you guys did that.
Chris Layton and some of those guys. Organ trio, basically. I just get up and do the last 5 songs with him, and so. But he had these guitars made with iPads inlaid under the pick guards. I'll show you in a minute. And they for Hawaii, it was like two Telecasters and a matching bass, and they all had iPads inlaid right here under the strings, and they just played a loop of like surf scenes, like waves and surfers. It's like nobody else would think of that but him.
Yeah.
And so he goes, "Hey, we brought these guitars. Can you play this?" And I said,
You played the iPad guitar?
I did. I was supposed to, because he asked me what strings I use, and I said 10s, and he put 7s on anyway. and I said, I went, and there was Marshalls there. I was like, oh my God, thank God that Marshall had reverb, and it did actually sound pretty good. A couple JCM 900s actually sounded pretty good.
Yeah.
For me, it's like a stretch, but I got through with it, and I actually had fun playing through those amps. But Billy goes, man, try that guitar, man. See if you can play the iPad guitar. And I picked it up and played a couple things. I said, Billy, I love you, man, but I can't play this guitar. I'll be out of tune and bending this thing. I couldn't do it. But he makes them sound amazing. I mean, it's crazy. So to your point, it's what works for you.
Yeah, I mean, there's
All right, the last stop for the day. We wanted to hit Glazier's and a few others, but we just don't have time. But we stopped by Music City Vintage, our newest spot here in Berry Hill. These guys are great people. And actually, I think the guy's the son of Christy Carter that owned Carter Vintage for a long time. But man, we've been in here just playing some nice stuff, and just a cool new spot. They've got a ton of cool amps in here, man. There's some cool arch tops, a couple good Martins, and some Gibsons over there. We've been playing a bunch of stuff and having some fun, just super nice people. But look at all these cool Fender amps they've got in here to choose from. A bunch of deluxe reverbs. And that's a beautiful sight, isn't it? But super nice people. If you're in town, come by here, check these out. Well, I didn't mean for this video to be a sales pitch to all these different places we've come in, but they're all good friends and they're really good people. So we like to, keep the network going and just, tell you how not only are these great shops, but they're also really great people too. So signing off for today. Thanks a million, y'all. See you soon. We're at Baja Burrito, my favorite restaurant in Nashville. I've been coming to this place for at least 25 years, and it is my favorite. I love this spot. These tacos are incredible. I'm gonna get beans and rice. Oh yeah, okay, great. I want to get a little cheese, a little pico, a little bit of lettuce, mild salsa. I'm going to get a little sour cream. Get a little corn. Thank you, buddy. A little corn and a little bit of cilantro. And that's looking good.
That's for here at the water?
That's for here.
Do you want
Thanks.
chips?
I'll take some chips, yeah. Put it all on one tab for me. Thank you so much, buddy.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man, we're doing it. I'll take one of those Topo Chicos also. Thanks, buddy. We love this place, man. I've been coming to Baja Burrito for a long time, but I've never had a burrito. I always get the tacos.
What kind of tacos are there?
One chicken, one beans and rice.
You want to drink with it?
Just the Topo Chico. Yeah, I'll get this. Thanks so much, buddy. All right.